Let's say we have a data set where we want to predict the count of bikes that have been rented. We have variables like season, holiday, working day, weather, temperature, etc. And our aim is to predict the count variable using all these independent variables. So, what's the first step you'll take? We first explore the data and we find that there are a lot of missing values in our data set. So, we then decide to calculate the missing values in each of these variables. We can calculate the ratio of missing values using a simple formula, which is the number of missing values in each column divided by the total number of observations. And to calculate the percentage, we'll of course multiply this figure by 100. We can calculate this ratio for all the variables in our data. Once we have the missing value ratio for all the variables, what's the next step? Now we can decide a threshold. Let's say 70%. And you can use this threshold and drop all the variables which have missing value ratio more than this threshold. So when we look at a problem again, the wind variable has a missing value ratio of 90%, which is way more than a threshold of 70%. Hence, we can go ahead and drop this variable. Generally, we can drop variables having missing value ratios more than 60 or 70%. Keep in mind that there's no hard and fast rule to decide this threshold, and it can vary from problem to problem. Once we drop the variables which had missing values more than the threshold, how do you think we should deal with the remaining variables which still have missing values in them? Should we just go ahead and remove all of them? Well, not quite. In these scenarios, we should first try to find out the reason for the missing values. It might be due to non response or people refusing to share that particular information. It could be due to an error while collecting the data, or it could be due to the error in reading the data. There could be n number of reasons why you have missing values in the data set. It's important to find that out. Once we know the reason, we will try to impute those missing values. We can use statistical measures like mean, median, mode, or we can even train a model to predict the missing values as well. So, this in a nutshell was how we can make use of missing values to reduce the dimensions in our dataset. It's time to put our learning into practice. Let's power up our Jupyter notebook and implement the first feature selection method we've covered, missing value ratio. So first, we'll import the pandas library as PD, then read the dataset and use the data.head function to look at the first 5 rows of our data. We saw this in the previous video. We have a bunch of independent variables and the target variable count. Let's go ahead and print the shape of the data. Here we go. We have 12,980 observations and 10 variables or columns. Next, we will check the number of missing values in each column. Interesting. Holiday and wind speed seem to have a very high number of missing observations. Season, working day, weather, and humidity also have missing values, as you can see, but they're pretty negligible compared to holiday and wind speed. To make this a little easier for ourselves, we'll convert this into a percentage number. As we saw above, holiday and wind speed have over 40% missing values. That's quite a lot. Generally, if a variable has around 40 to 50% missing values, we would want to impute them using either of the methods that we have discussed in the previous video. But as the aim of this video is to make you understand how we can apply the missing value filter to reduce the dimensionality of the dataset, we'll set a threshold of 40% and then drop the variables having missing value more than this threshold. Make sense? Let's move on. Let's save these percentages into a variable which we'll call A and the column names in a variable called variables. Now comes the interesting part. We will use a for loop here to apply the threshold value on our dataset. As I said earlier, I'm setting the threshold as 40%, but this can vary depending on the kind of problem you're working with. Let's print out this new variable. As we expected, the holiday and wind speed variable have been dropped since they went above our threshold value of 40%. We'll put the remaining variables into a new data frame and we'll call it new underscore data. And let's just check out the first 5 observations on this. Yep, all according to plan. Let's verify the percentage of missing values in each variable in the new data. Perfect. Finally, compare the shape of our new data with the original data set. As you might have guessed already, the number of observations is the same, but there are two less variables in the new data set. This is how we can perform missing value ratio in Python.